Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller, the podcast. I'm joined by Seth.
Hey, welcome, guys. Thanks for finding us on the internet.
Now, these shows originally aired on Brookings Radio, but now they're all here for your enjoyment. I hope you like it.
There you go. Sit back, enjoy the show, relax. Let us know if you want to see anything on future shows. As we said, this comes out live in the Brookings area, but enjoy this archive episode.
Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. When it comes to beer, yeast is the little engine that could, converting the sugars basically in grain soup to alcohol and developing amazing flavors in the process. There's a business in Sioux Falls that is growing and selling those awesome little microbes. Union Labs this week on Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Wyatt Borderwyk says he and his father, Barry, started the business in late 2012 and began selling yeast for the home brewing market early in 2013.
We started out, looking at just the home brewer group, but as microbreweries have started popping up in the area, we've started providing our yeast to them as well. A couple in particular would be Wooden Legs up in Brookings, Bank in Hendricks, and even Take 16 in Laverne, Minnesota.
They went into it thinking they could supply both yeast and lab testing to the ever-growing brewing scene and to wineries as well.
We also do some laboratory services for brewers and vintners and also hop growers as well. It started out, with the thought that the brewing industry is kind of growing in America and in our region in particular, and that, with that growth would come some demand for yeast and laboratory services for those companies that are unable to propagate their own yeast and assess their product for quality purposes.
Perhaps we should back up just a little bit here and stress the importance of yeast in the beer making process. Wooden Legs, a Brookings co-owner, head brewer, Seth Koch.
Yeast is probably one of the most underappreciated elements of beer, but it actually adds more components flavor-wise to a beer than anything else. I mean, people always get really excited about the hops or in some cases the malt, but the reality is that the yeast is one of the largest flavor components.
Thanks, Seth. Now back to Wyatt at Union Labs. He says similar yeast sellers and testing firms are mainly located on the West Coast, a couple out east.
You'd have to send your product pretty far away to get it assessed, so you'd be spending a little extra time waiting for results. And then also, if you were to be buying yeast, particularly liquid yeast from other vendors, it'd also be coming from rather far away, so you'd be spending a little bit of money overnighting that material to your location.
He says they supply ale, lager, and some Belgian yeast.
Start with a single colony on a Petri dish and take that single colony and propagate it into trillions of cells through the course of 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the pitch that we're making.
More on Union Labs when Beer Untapped continues.
Anaerobic methylation, alcoholic fermentation, NADH oxidation. Give me a beer.
Welcome back to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller as we talk about yeast and testing services provider Union Lab of Sioux Falls. We've been hearing from Union Lab's co-owner, Wyatt Borderwyk. And one thing we haven't really talked about yet is the fact that yeast is a living organism. It has to be alive to convert sugars to alcohol. So where does it come from?
A lot of folks like to find a particular beer that they like and do what they call bottle diving, where you take some of the sediment at the bottom of the bottle and isolate colonies from there. There's also culture stocks that are out there, and various other sources where you can get the yeast.
In addition, there is yeast everywhere, roaming free in the environment. Most of it not really suitable for making beer, but there could be workable yeast out there in the wild.
There's certainly possibilities there. It'd be more than likely more of a farmhouse style beer that you'd make with that, kind of astringent. Not a whole lot of people like that, but it is kind of a cool idea to think, I could pull a colony off of a grape made here in South Dakota and have a South Dakota-based yeast. That'd be pretty cool.
Seth from Wooden Leg says it's great having these services available nearby.
What makes this really cool is that this is the brewer's direct relationship with the yeast manufacturers. And maybe manufacturer is a bad word. Maybe a yeast cultivator, yeast wrangler, yeast cowboy. We can say, hey, we're looking for this specific style of yeast, and they'll be able to say, hey, we can help you. Maybe they went through a yeast bank or they have identified these. And even as importantly, we can send our house yeast down there. So I had trouble sourcing some of our house yeast for our farmhouse. And I was able to, I had a small amount, but I didn't have the capacity to grow it into the large amount that I wanted to efficiently here. So I sent them a small sample of our farmhouse yeast, and they took a small sample and became a big sample, and we'll be pitching it in our beers. And this is really cool because it's a way for us to have these local access to technology.
Finally, today, let's look ahead just a little bit, and it's worth a look because a great brewery is bringing their beers to South Dakota for the first time this month, and Wooden Legs will be part of it Friday the 26th. As Founders Brewing debuts.
They're making their way out here. They signed with Johnson Brother Famous Brands as their distributor, who actually distributes Wooden Legs Brewing Company beer as well. We've teamed up with Johnson and Founders to bring a release party to Brookings. We try to do this every time we get a brewery that it makes a splash into South Dakota, show them a real, roll out the welcome mat, if you will. So we're going to have their beers on tap on the 26th. It's a Friday night there, where Joe's got some special food stuff planned. Of course, anybody that comes out, if you've ever been out to any of the other release parties, we have all the information on the new beers. It's a good chance to come and try all of them or some of them.
That's it for this week's edition of Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Until next time, drink local and drink responsibly. Thank you for listening to this archived edition of Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Feel free to listen to other episodes, and if there's anything you'd like us to talk about on a future show, please let us know. Thanks again.